Going once, going twice, sold! You're listening to The Property Pod.
Hi everyone and welcome to another edition of the Property Pod. Today you've got me, Patrick Berry, on the mic because Aaron's on holidays, and I'm not even going to attempt that intro, Aaron, because you get it wrong every week and I ain't going to do it.
Nor am I.
Welcome, John. How are we, mate?
I'm good, brother. I'm really excited actually for today because we've got...
Look, I'm really nervous to begin with. I know you're about to jump in with what we're going to be talking about today, but without Aaron and working the mics by ourselves, this could be a train wreck.
Yeah, well, we've done it once before. It sort of went okay.
No, that was you and Aaron. It was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I just, for some reason, I had a thought that you and I had a crack at once before, but I think...
Well, maybe we did and it never made it to air because Aaron was like, that's terrible.
More than likely.
But I think today we're going to be good because we've got someone else coming in to help us. So, look, we've lost Aaron this week, everyone. So, look, he's having a week off, having a bit of time with his family, which is fantastic. But we've replaced him with a lady by the name of Angie Roberts from My Hobart Home, and I'm really excited to get her in.
Yeah, because in this case, and it's brilliant too, because we had, after we'd made contact with Angie, she's ended up, her and I have been working together with a client to purchase one of the local properties as well. So she's an on-the-ground boots buyer's agent.
Yeah, well, look, we could talk all day, but let's just get straight into it, I say.
414 Real Estate has been operating within the northern suburbs of Hobart since 2006 with their innovative approach to marketing and managing your property. They have all your property needs covered. Find out more by visiting them today at 414.com.au.
All right, everyone, thanks very much for coming back. We're really excited today because we've got Angie Roberts from My Hobart Home in the studio today. Angie runs a buyer's agent here in Hobart, and we're excited to find out a little bit more about it. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So for people out there, tell us a little bit about what is a buyer's agent?
So a buyer's agent is someone who works exclusively for the buyer. So a selling agent is obviously looking after the best interest of the vendor, and a buyer's agent is someone that you engage to look after your best interest. So they're assisting throughout the whole buying process. So firstly, obviously understanding what it is that the buyer is looking for in their property aspirations. They do all of the groundwork. They search for the properties. They inspect the properties on the buyer's behalf and then shortlist the ones that they think will be suitable. They negotiate with the selling agent or with the vendor and conduct all of the due diligence that's required, and then help the buyer in any other aspect that they require right up until settlement.
Yeah, well, see, I know people might not realise, but it's actually so much more common that in the States, for example, everyone exclusively works with buyers and sellers agents.
That's
it's
right.
just, like in the UK, most of the world, this is the common theme where you've got representation on both sides, but it's Australia, it's sort of the unique one in some ways where most buyers do their research. I know my brother in Victoria, for instance, so he used a buyer's agent exclusively and because he couldn't probably be bothered doing the work. Yes. So it's like, well, yeah, if anyone's actually in that process, you've spent 6 months doing all this, what are the questions you ask? Imagine if you could just make a phone call and then bang, someone delegate all that work that you've done over the last 6 months, and that's basically what you're going to come in to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was working in Sydney as a selling agent before I moved back to Tasmania in 2018, and we worked really closely with buyers agents. It was something that was more common in the Sydney marketplace. And I saw the value that a buyer's agent could bring a buyer that had been struggling to find a property, but not only find a property, actually be successful with negotiations and be able to secure the property.
Yep.
So when I came back to Tasmania, I knew I wanted to stay within the property industry in some regard, but it just became very apparent that there was little assistance available for buyers, which is really why I started the business.
Well, I know in your buyers, well, you'd mentioned that obviously yourself and your family have been engaged in this industry for a long time, buyers and sellers and developing. So what's the start there, and where can you remember getting your first little taste in terms of property investment?
So, yeah, certainly. My dad is a builder, property developer, and so constantly throughout my childhood he was buying and renovating and developing and selling. So it was an ongoing process, and that was certainly my childhood. We did have a lot of sort of hands-on experience with that as we got older, and I realised that it was a passion of mine as well. So it did certainly become a family business with my mum getting very involved in the interior design aspect, and my brother is now a builder as well. So we would be sort of on the lookout for properties and developments that would suit the family.
So the full package.
Yeah, absolutely. We've pretty now, with me being the agent, we've sort of got it all sorted.
Yep.
So, yeah, it was certainly the first property I bought solely on my own was in Sydney. Everything else up until that point had been sort of as a family arrangement. But it gave me confidence, obviously, that we were buying and selling so often when it came to, me being a little bit more independent, that I knew how that process worked a little bit. What surprised me on the flip side was when I was in Sydney, and I'd bought and sold a few times in Sydney as well, and obviously in the real estate industry selling as a full-time job.
Yep.
When it came to buying back here in Tasmania, so in 2018 we decided that we wanted to relocate the family back to Hobart. Had very clear indication on what it was we were trying to find. I had my family on the ground who were able to assist with inspections and whatnot. But there were significant challenges that we faced, even with my experience. And so we were on planes at the last minute trying to make inspections. Would arrive in Hobart and the property had already been sold. And so it did take some time and a lot of effort to be able to secure a property back here again. And I thought, someone with my experience and, having that local family support, it was really challenging. So how difficult must it be for someone who's trying to move from interstate to Tasmania and they don't have that experience or the local network?
So that point there leads me to a question. The type of people that would potentially engage a buyer's agent, are they predominantly people from the mainland looking to buy in a different state, or are they investors, or is there a certain style of person that you would tend to find you deal with a little bit more?
It really varies, to be honest with you. And when I started the business, I assumed that it would be mainly mainlanders who are looking to migrate to Tasmania, and that certainly is a large portion of the people I work with. But, there's a lot of local buyers as well who have been out looking, as you say, for the last 6-12 months, doing everything that they believe is right.
They can't win
and
one.
they can't purchase a property. So they're becoming totally disillusioned with the process.
Absolutely.
And they're just looking for help. And I think, an extension further from that as well is it becomes so emotional. And so if they can step back a little bit, they don't want to make silly decisions. So if they can step back a little bit, tell someone exactly what it is they're looking for, and then have them go out and do the groundwork and, put their blood, sweat and tears into it, it just makes the process more, more pleasant for them and less stressful.
Well, there was something too that's been common for me is just how little that people actually know what they're signing, even if it's their third or fourth offer. It's like, but as one of those, as your agent or your conveyancer, I understand that they said they're comfortable. Has anyone actually walked you through the terms and conditions? They're like, the what? I'm just thinking that it's that when we were chatting this morning, at Eastern Avenue, you'd mentioned, look, with your client there at the moment, they're working with their lawyers just to draw up the agreement. But the good thing is that you and I can have a conversation specifically because we know all the little ins and outs. They can quickly go back and forth the stuff that's important. But for the client, though, is it especially in a very stressful buying environment where they're forced to make decisions in 15 minutes,
really
and then they're forced to sign a contract, and they under pressure and they're emotionally involved. And then there's clauses and stuff, and so you can quickly make concessions or say yes and no to things that you quite honestly don't understand what you're signing. So it's that, again, having you, as far as I could see, in your back corner, just go, hey, just on your shoulder saying, do you realise that this is the case, or no, this is something we can do or can't do. So obviously that negotiation aspect too comes into after finding the property, and where then so I see that as a buyer's agent, that you are just enabling someone to, it's like irrational thought when through an emotional decision in many ways.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Oh, so you're referring to them as like the little bad angel and good angel on each shoulder.
Well, not really. It's that because you're forced to make big decisions very quickly in a whole new way, in a whole new genre of stuff you quite potentially don't understand. Is that it's being able to have that other person in your mind going, hey, just so you know, have you thought of this? Have you referenced this? This is something you need to look for.
Absolutely. And I was so surprised how most people actually don't get the contract looked at even before they're putting in an offer. And obviously it's a standard term contract, and I think that's something that's a term that's thrown about the industry. Oh, you don't need to worry, it's a standard term contract. But as you say, people don't know what they're signing, and they don't understand how they can, what sort of changes they can make to the contract to make it, more suitable to them. And a lot of what we do as well is actually understanding what else is important to the vendor as well, so that when we're putting an offer forward, we're making it as enticing as possible. So it doesn't all become about price.
Basically, I guess what you're trying to say is that you will help the vendor where you can to also make your client's offer look more appealing.
That's right. When the market is so tough, obviously if you're willing to spend the most money, that helps, but we're not always. And certainly we don't want to overpay for a property. It is about making smart decisions. But if you can understand the other aspects of the deal that could be important to the vendor, so for example, if they've already purchased a property and they're trying to tee up simultaneous settlements so they don't have to organise bridging finance and whatnot, if I can get that information from the agent when we put our offer forward, if our settlement period lines up, then that holds value to the vendor.
Definitely does.
So it isn't just about price. It can be about other things as well that, as you say, makes their offer more enticing, and then they've got more chance of success.
So this is, they'll give you the scope of their profile. So the buyer's going, okay, look, really simple, but I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house for my family in a certain suburb. So in that sense, you're profiling them to go just as they would themselves, right? So it's like what they're after, what suburbs you need, what sort of price guide. And then it's on you you'll do all the groundwork, and then you'll look at the property, and then you'll do inventory. And then at this point, then it's only once you get to a select few that you're comfortable with presenting to the client, and then you begin the consideration of offers. Is that sort of the idea?
It does depend on the buyer you're working with as well.
Okay.
Obviously, for mainland buyers, they can't get here at the moment. So I'm buying for people sight unseen. So the process is a little bit different. We take videos for everyone, but the videos become very important. And it's crucial that I understand exactly what it is that they're looking for in terms of the feel and the style for the house. If it is an owner-occupier, you don't want to get that wrong.
Yep.
If someone's local, not that the pressure's taken off, but you've obviously got that opportunity that they can come in and inspect and make sure that what you think they were after is actually what they're after.
Yep.
So it's a relationship that grows. Ordinarily it probably takes a couple of months for us to find a property, again, depending on their sort of timing requirements.
And I assume one that changes over times as well, like what a buyer says on day one turns out to be something completely different on day 90 as to what they end up buying.
Absolutely, totally. With the property and with the location and what they thought was important to them, they realise that perhaps there's another, a whole other set of requirements that they hadn't first considered. But yes, generally I am sourcing the property. So at the moment, because it is so competitive, a lot of what I'm doing is based on trying to uncover off-market listings and at least get sort of notice about properties that are upcoming.
Yep.
So even if they are going to market, if I can find out from the agent a week or two beforehand,
so that you can get your foot in the door and just start the process.
Yeah. And even 3 or 4 days notice gives you a far better advantage to someone who's finding out about the property once it hits realestate.com.
Well, yeah, right. It gives you that opportunity not to have to make that snap decision.
Exactly.
Like it gives you that opportunity to do a bit of test and measure and to look into it a little bit more deeper before the agent's ringing you and saying, I need an answer by 5 o'clock tonight.
Exactly. And it kind of means actually that then we get to set that timing.
Yep.
So if we've been in there a week earlier and we've done all of our due diligence and the agent says no, we need to open this weekend, we can kind of be applying the pressure as well to say, okay, you can have this weekend, but that's it. So it doesn't give the other buyers on the ground as long to get involved in the negotiations. So we're minimising our competition to a certain degree.
Well, and that's a good point you make there, because ultimately I think people have this thought that, do I have to sign anything? No, everyone's in total control at all times. And so it's the same even when, like you said, is it the idea of putting the pressure on was what you're meaning to people understand is you're setting a time frame. So that would be in that case, I assume, is that, look, hey, we're more than happy to what we believe is an exceptionally competitive offer, but this is going to be only available 24 hours, for example.
Correct. And, you don't want to apply too much pressure either, because you understand that the vendor is in a, emotional, stressful position also, so they want to do what's right for them. So it's not about selling agent versus buyer's agent.
Absolutely.
At all. I don't want that sort of competitive environment. It's about understanding that we've got two parties with hopefully, where you can make a win-win. You understand the needs of both people and the objectives of both people, and it's matching those needs.
Look, I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is just get a property sold in the most efficient way possible. And it shouldn't be an us versus them between you guys and obviously us as agents. But yeah, it's really exciting to see how this is sort of taking play and how it can be helpful to a buyer in the marketplace.
And it's great for me sort of, I started the business at the beginning of the year, and just seeing the change and, change of opinion and even the engagement, with buyers, with agents that I'm working with. They understand that the value that we bring now as well in terms of having a qualified buyer and having someone who is able to help a buyer through the process. sometimes that is left to the agent, and it becomes a bit of a conflict because they need to look after the vendor's best interest. They're trying to do the right thing by a buyer and help guide them along the process. So if I can step in and take that responsibility off them, it makes for an easier process all round.
Well, absolutely. And a classic example of that for me recently was a property that didn't come up with finance, and where one of the challenges with that one was the valuation was exceptionally harsh. And I mean, look, it happens. You can't really backtrack after that. But I mean, to perspective is that the owner had a mortgage valuation that was $30,000 higher than the second valuation that came in only a couple months later. So unfortunately, the two valuers were looking from two very different perspectives, and there was not really much we could do about that. But where it came to the education with the buyer is that where I was talking about that idea was do they know what they're signing? Is it, I'd spent 30 to 45 minutes walking them through, look, this is related to your condition precedent. So if your finance clause a decline based on the valuation that we've discussed about, we know that in conjunction with your broker, this should all map out properly. It was okay. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. But then they were asking me, okay, so what do I do now? Who do I need to notify? What do I say to my conveyancer? And now I'm perfectly comfortable with having those conversations. But the reality is, a lot of the time, that where agents are much more accessible than your finance broker or your lawyer counterpart, is that if they've got a question at 5:30, well, who do you call? It always leans back on the agent. And I suppose where the reality is that I've got a vested interest to get the deal together for the vendor, but we're trying to look after the buyers as best as we can. But generally speaking, they've got no one in their corner to be able to call, because not every selling agent's going to provide that same level of in-depth conversation that we might do here. And that's why, for having you there is so vital, because then one, you'd be accessible to those buyers. So by the time you have the conversation with me, all that backward work between the clients is done, so we can get to a very quick conversation around about how do we get this deal together, for example.
That's right. Yeah, I've got a similar one at the moment, actually, and I think this is where I'm really relying on my experience as a selling agent, because I know the conversations a selling agent needs to have with their vendor. So we've had one where we had a short finance clause, and banks taking as long as they are at the moment. We weren't able to meet it in quite the time, so we needed an extension. And just being able to extract the information from the buyer that I knew was going to be important for the agent to communicate to his vendor, it just made the process really easy and really seamless. And they've agreed to the extension without trouble.
Absolutely.
The buyers were really nervous, and I think sort of a natural reaction is to not communicate. So they weren't providing the information.
That's
that they
so
needed.
wrong.
It's just, if no one, if I sit in the corner and I don't call anyone, hopefully they won't realise we're not quite, we're not meeting the deadline and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
But I understand sort of the broader need of everyone involved, so I could get the information from their broker that we required. I could reassure the agent that they're doing everything that they can, and that signs are looking great, and then in turn he can tell his vendor that, and we get agreement. And touch wood, we should be.
I think that's the problem is communication does get dropped off a lot, and people think that they can just bury their head in the sand instead of having that conversation. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of vendors are happy to work with purchasers as long as they know what's happening.
That's right.
Not knowing what's happening for a vendor is probably the worst thing that they can experience, because they're just sitting there worrying about, am I moving, am I not, what's happening?
Yeah.
So I think the more conversations that can happen with a ppurchaser and getting them to understand, tell us everything, helps keep deals moving forward.
That's right. You've got more trust.
It's kind of like in a partner, you're sitting there on the couch, and your wife's just clammed up. You're like, "Are you okay? Fine. Everything's fine." Everything is not fine. Please just tell me what's up, otherwise I can't do anything about it. And so I've sort of my sort of analogy that I'll often start with. Well, a contract is a relationship that has to be maintained, and I think of it like spot fires. You're just constantly dousing them out. So it's that if there's anything that gets wrong or you're concerned about, please let me know. Otherwise, if it sits in the dark, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't get dealt with. It doesn't just sort of go away. No, it festers, and then the fire blows up into the point where the deal breaks down.
That's right.
And where it could have very been easily fixed with a simple conversation. Well, then I suppose, like you said at the start, like right now too, where you had a real hard time, purchasing property when you're interstate. And, we thought after the recent COVID outbreak that things might have died down. It seems that the activity is still very vibrant in the Hobart market.
Absolutely.
I mean, what are some things that you're doing as a professional then in order to help secure deals for your clients that other people might not have considered themselves?
In this market, there's a few ways that we're helping, but I've touched on it already. It really is about getting that early exposure to properties that are coming up or ones that are selling off market.
Yeah, so it's really building building those good relationships.
It has to be, yeah. And that's, that's an ongoing process. I mean, agents are very busy, as you would know, and your focus obviously needs to be on finding the listings and selling the properties that you've got currently listed. So it's taking, weekly, in some cases daily phone calls following up with agents saying, I have a qualified buyer, this is their buyer's brief. You mentioned you might have something coming up in South Hobart or whatever it might be. Where are you at with that? And so I've just got this constant sort of follow-up happening so that I am keeping in tune with what is coming on and what the potential options for my clients are going to be. So, I mean, that's in this kind of market, it is about being able to create, widening their property options by giving them exposure to more properties. It's also about the stress and time and energy, sort of things that we mentioned before, being able to sort of detach yourself somewhat from the process so you're not becoming disheartened. And as the market shifts, which I hope it does, to at least even out or be a little bit more of a buyer's market, I think buyer's agents are just as important, but at that point it becomes a little bit more about the analysis of value and the negotiation. Yep. So the buyers are able, or, the buyer's agent certainly should be able to pick that swing in the market. Yeah. And then you're not looking at prices 6 months ago, you're looking at prices this week or yesterday. And so that you're making sure that you take full advantage of that swing.
So I can imagine a lot of people at the moment may trying to set up retirements and things like this. Maybe we're looking at share markets, they're not quite performing as well, and now considering potential rental properties for investment. As someone that's new to investment, if I was to hire you as a buyer's agent, how would you guide me through trying to pick what I should be looking to buy? Like, I've never owned a rental property before. I'm keen to get into the market, but I just don't want to go buy the first place I see and spend too much on it, or, not understand why I'm buying in that area, for instance. Absolutely.
I mean, again, it comes down to your requirements as an investor. So some investors will obviously look for yield, and that's what it's all about, that they can get that sort of regular income. Others, it's more about the capital growth. Yep. And then development is probably the third other, sort of key aspect that we're looking for with investment. So once I get a clear understanding on what it is you're looking for, if you are retiring, probably it's more an easy care investment that, you can get a balance of a reasonable yield, but also some capital growth. Yep. I'll suggest suburbs to you, and obviously the budget plays a large part in the kind of property that we're looking for, be it a unit or an established home. So in those instances, it can take a little bit longer to really, it's not so much necessarily about the location or the specific property. It is more about the package as a whole. But once I find properties that I believe are suitable, and if you can get a property that's already being used as an investment, so you've got a tenant in there and you've got that sort of guaranteed income from the moment you settle, it's a bonus. But yeah, it's really sort of finding a property that is going to meet the individual requirements of each person. But we provide comprehensive reports so they get a full understanding on the suburb data and the trends and demographic and that kind of thing, so that they can try and match the property to something that sort of fits their overall aim and objective.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's that three sort of core indicators there, which was, capital growth or yield, for example. But then if one might be completely irrelevant to one person because they would just really want to maximise their tax benefits by having grossly underlet in order to maximise the the negative gearing. Thank you. But then or it could be, like you said, a buy, renovate and flip scenario as well. So they're all classified as investment properties, but they're going to have to buy a very drastically different kind of property if they want to, work to their plan in that sense.
Right, absolutely.
And I suppose for me, it's like, well, I'd rather be able to say, look, here are my three things. You please do that, please, and I'll just go back and do what and just go do something else.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even more so with an investment, because it is, there is no emotion involved. It is just about something that, where the numbers will work. So it's quite easy to sort of be able to hand that off to someone else and say, okay, this is the brief, go and find it, and you get back to living your life.
Well, that's a good segue where you said if the numbers will work. And I think a lot of the time people look at selling agents as the same. It's like, well, the numbers would work if I didn't have to pay an agent to sell the damn thing. Obviously, how does engaging a buyer's agent then, what's the brief there? Because it is the buyer that's paying your service, isn't it? And then obviously you probably go through the same process. It's like, well, why should I be paying you when I have to do it? It's like, so what does that look like for a buyer engaging you, and what that might look like at a cost and value in a lot of ways?
Certainly. So I'm a bit flexible flexible in that regard in terms of I don't want people. There's a lot of different services that we offer, and I don't want people to pay for services that they don't see value in or they don't have a need for.
Great.
So we do tailor it depending on the requirement. Obviously, people coming from the mainland who can't inspect the property, they need the whole
Package.
The whole package.
Yep.
Yes, but there are other people who are based here who might just want someone who is in the market on a daily basis to provide an assessment on value and what they think it's worth, and
Just
give
so
them
they
all of the
feel
data on the
confident about
comparable sales. That's right.
Yeah.
So and again, there's other people who just logistically can't get here. They've bought and sold properties for their life and they've no issue in dealing with the agent and managing the negotiation, but they just need someone to physically inspect the property and make sure there's no sort of, no concerns that they can't see based on the online listing. So we vary the service to the individual needs. But to answer your question, there's an engagement fee. Which obviously, people pay up front. That tells me that they're a serious buyer and they're committed to the relationship that we're going to form and all of the work that I put in from that day one. And then there is a success fee that's then payable on settlement, which obviously is only payable when we've achieved the objective and purchased the property. So again, that those fees do vary a little bit based on someone's timing or their budget. But we sort of work with what their objectives are and what their budget is.
And is there a limit as to how many people you can sort of manage at one time? Like I assume there probably is, to be able to offer the level of service that you're suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I at the moment I've found the golden number is 4. Possibly and it depends. It's challenging at the moment because the stock levels are down.
Of course.
And so I'm having to spend so much time and energy actually finding the properties. Even when that swaps, it might be something that I can purchase properties a little bit more efficiently and it's not taking so much groundwork. At the moment I find is 4, and I try not to have any crossover, obviously, between what people are looking for. I don't want two of my clients sort of
don't want
fighting
two people
for the
both
one.
wanting an investment property for the same purpose.
That's
Absolutely.
right. That's right. So, it is, and we're at the point already where, I unfortunately have to say to people, I've got a full book at the moment to feel committed that I can offer the service that I want to provide. I can't help you right now.
That must be really challenging because are you the only buyer's agent in Hobart at the moment? Or
There's a couple now.
Okay, cool.
But it is, a relatively new service. So, I think there's certainly enough opportunity out there for the players in the market currently. And there doesn't seem to be a downturn in the people wanting to move to Tasmania. So I think that's
it's probably going to go up, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Is going to grow. And they're the people that seem to need more help, but we want to be able to offer the service to the local people as well who see value in it. It's...
Well, and I think that where you said you've got those differing levels of service, where it could just be you just need someone who is going to provide you advice. Is the value correct? Because a lot of the time it's like, but my uncle or my auntie or my dad or my brother said, you paid too much. It's like, okay, I don't want to discredit anything they said, but it's just like, but maybe just get some impartial advice.
That's exactly right.
And also too, where understanding that purchasing that engagement fee is like, well, you are investing in someone's service, so they have got your back 100% too. So it's not like but they're doing it for me. It's like, well, there's a difference, I suppose, when there is a financial transaction in business, where it's like, no, you've paid me to do a very good service for this particular thing. So that's all I'm engaged to do. So you're getting someone to protect your interest when you're purchasing a property, and that's so much different than calling on a mate. And that's why then it may seem like a little bit up front, but get the value you get at the end of the day. You pay for yourself. It's really simple.
So I certainly hope so. And feedback to date has been positive.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it sums it up really well, Angie, and I think that's probably a good spot that we might sort of put a pin in it for today. But I think it's going to give people a real understanding as to what a buyer's agent does. There would be a lot of people listening today that probably don't even know people like yourself exist. And I think it'll be a welcome sort of thing for people to realise is out there as added help, because a lot of people do struggle, I guess. So to know that there is someone there that can help you in the buying process is a great thing. So how do people find you? I know you've got a full book at the moment, but if they were wanting to reach out, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Certainly, call me at any time. But my website is myhobarthome.com.au. If you jump on there, it's got full information on our services and obviously contact details. I'd love to have a chat and help out where I can.
Awesome. Well, we thank you so much for being part of our show today. Obviously, really excited to get you on, and hopefully we can get you on again in the future to have another chat.
Wonderful. Love to.
Beautiful. Thanks heaps for your time.
Thanks, Angie. See, that was I'm really glad. That was really awesome for Angie to come in, and to think that I like the way she said that people would think that, buyers and sellers agents are adversaries. It's like, that's not the story at all. The whole point is we're actually working together in the best interest of both clients in order to get the deal together. It's not, and that's the thought where people thinking, it has to be I won or and I'll beat the other person. Normally when it comes to house negotiation, it's about a win-win. By us working with, as a buyer's agent a lot of the time, or in both parties, is that everyone comes off better because you've got professionals working for you in every direction.
No, that's it. And I think the ideas that Angie put on the table today were a real eye-opener for the industry as to what the job of a buyer's agent is, and I can see why people want to work with her and why she's probably got a full book at the moment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, hopefully she makes our jobs easier all round.
100%. Yeah, so I think for me, if anyone's been considering, it's worth asking the question because, the services are highly valuable.
You're a fond lover of having someone in your team, John, so...
That's right. We just got another one.
This team, look, they say an NFL football team is large, John, but I think your team is now larger.
Yeah, most likely.
Because you got a guy for everything.
I got a guy. I got guys and gals.
Look, really fun. Look, can't wait to get back on the mics next week of ours, so that's going to be exciting. Yep. So, look, I don't even know what we're doing next week. It's going to be a mystery for everyone. I'd love to spruce next week's episode, but I think it's a bit of a surprise.
Mystery box at the moment, but it's going to be great.
Yeah, I can already feel it, everyone. Well, thanks everyone for listening to us. I know it's always different just with John and Pat on the mic, but hopefully you got a bit out of it today. And look, we look forward to getting the full team back on the mics next week. Thanks a lot.
Till then.
See you guys.
You have been listening to The Property Pod, produced and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Real Estate and McGregor First National Propriety Limited.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek and use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services. No investment decision or activity should be undertaken on the basis of this